Good afternoon, Los Angeles. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM, like we do every Thursday, 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for the past 7 years. Wow. Anyway, so if you've never listened to the Ask Brien show, we're going to try to help you learn something about your business. If you have a small business shop down the street and you're trying to figure out how to count your shekels, or you've got a big, huge company and you got 300 people and you're trying to figure out what can I do to make my business scale even bigger, we're going to try to teach you or help you learn something about your business. We do this every week. We sit down typically with a person that either has a background in scaling their business from A to Z, and went from, hey, I was on the kitchen table and now I got 300 stores around the country, or we also have somebody that might be, hey, I specialize in X or Y. And X and Y is really, really important to know. But without any further ado, we're going to ask my co-host, Alex Grossman, why is Brien, B-R-I-E-N? Because most of the people that we know, when we say Ask Brien, B-R-I-A-N or B-R-Y-N, why do we have the E?
Well, I don't think it's because your name is Peter O'Brien, is it?
Well, no, but Peter has more E's than Brien.
Well, I think the E stands for the most important person on the planet, and that is the engineer.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.
And
do the show without her.
Is that also because you're an engineer, Alex?
Well, yes, I do have a little. I don't have a train, but I am an engineer. Yes.
All right. So I got 2 engineers to 1 lawyer. All right, that's going to be an interesting show. All right, let's continue.
Sounds like the beginning of a cheesy joke.
It definitely does. I think it's a show without Charlie Sheen. You know, 2 engineers and a lawyer, but you know.
No, that's 2.5 men. All my jokes are cheesy. Come on.
True.
Let's be realistic.
True. You're not wrong.
Well, there's no doubt for you that you do is definitely excitement. You bring that excitement to the show every week. It's incredible.
And enthusiasm.
God.
Wow.
It wasn't as bad.
There goes my E, which is the eardrum. But you know, it's
you don't have any eardrums. Not after this show.
No way,
Alex. Maybe you should have a workers' comp claim for the E. Ear.
I love it. No, if we ask the engineer if you have a ego, what do you think she would say?
She'd say, I don't even know what that means. I only know about it. I know about it.
Well, but I do think one of the most important things we do here is educate.
Well, that's right, and that's also from the Wall, the Pink Floyd album, right? We don't need no education, except we're the opposite.
Well, but we do need experts to help educate, though, don't we?
But what does that mean? What's an expert? How do you qualify? Who's an expert?
I have no idea. Why don't you tell me?
Well, we know that typically you need to know something for 5 years before you can learn. Say you know something about any subject. And why is it 5 years? Because a typical person is working 40 hours a week. We say 50 weeks in a year because you get 2 weeks off for vacation and holidays, right? That's 2,000 hours. Multiply that out by 5 years. That's 10,000 hours. But many of our guests, are what we call an entrepreneur, another E. And the entrepreneurs typically don't need to, they're an expert, after 2 years, maybe shorter because of the amount of hours they work. I mean, Alex, you're a good example, right? You have a little side business over there. What do you work, 2-3 hours a day?
Well, yeah, I wish. I sleep 2-3 hours a day. The rest is working. So welcome to my world.
Right. So you must be an expert in your business probably after 9 months.
Exactly.
All right. Now, what are the other E's?
Well, I don't know. What are the other E's? What other E's would you like to EV?
If you and Jen were like me, you would empathize with other people.
Oh, empathy.
Yeah, sure,
Something
totally.
You don't have. Empathy.
Yeah.
That's part of your ego is that lack of empathy.
I never heard of empathy before, though. But somebody told me it means something. I don't know. Something about feelings And feelings has two E's in it too, right? Feelings or stuff like that. I don't know. Who knows that stuff? Anyway, that's one of the things, right? And, obviously experience. What did my former co-host say? She used to say, grease lightning is electrifying with another E. So, there's so many E's. But we don't want to go over E's, although technically we could go over exports, which has an E in it, but we're not going to do that. But we are going to go over a couple of areas today. One of the areas we want to discuss is very, very big in the news today. That's what we call a tariff. Now, Alex, do you know what a tariff is?
I do know what a tariff is, but do you know what a tariff is?
Well, first of all, there's two types of tariffs, okay? So a tariff can be a tax or duty. Some people say it's not a tax, but in my opinion, it is a tax, right? So if you've got a country in China or Canada or any country in the world, and they have a product, and let's say they make coffee, right? Or they produce coffee there, and then they want to sell it. They want to export it. Exporting means selling to another country. Importing means taking it into your own country. But so if you're exporting into your country and the United States says, yeah, we'll let you, but we're trying to protect our coffee farmers. Well, what do we want to do? So in order to protect our coffee farmers, make sure we have tons and tons of coffee farmers here, well, what we're going to do is we're going to say, yeah, Vietnam, whatever country you want to export your coffee to, that's fine. But we're going to tell you, hey, it's X percent. Not like the federal taxes, because it can be different by country, but you're going to have to pay a little extra. So that coffee may be 90 cents a pound, and then we may say, okay, it's 35 cents a pound for a tax, which is they call a customs or duty that the country that's importing it requires the country to pay for the privilege of being able to sell their products within that country. Is that pretty close, Alex?
I'd say that's right on the money. I think that as we talk about it, though, we have to understand now tariffs are in the news, and we're imposing them as the U.S., but many countries have imposed tariffs on U.S. goods for so long, especially as a owner of a company and the CEO of companies that export it pretty heavily throughout the world. We've been hit with tariffs in just about every country, and some of them pretty significant for many, many years. Would you agree with that, Peter?
Well, let's not get into the the political debate here, because we could go through quite a show just on that if you wanted to. My position is that we've always had taxes and tariffs, just not a higher percentage on countries, and so that's how we keep some goods in and some goods out. The main object to have a tariff is to protect an industry in the country. So, for instance, if we wanted to protect not coffee, let's say we want to protect oranges, right? So if we have a tax that, it costs $1 for us to have oranges here and someone else is making them for 80 cents because the labor is really cheap, well, we want to put a tariff on there for 40 cents so that when people bring those oranges in and it's going to be $1.20 and our orange is going to be, 80 cents, well, we're going to be able to sell our product. And that allows us to create jobs in the orange community and create more orange growth of the orange is in our country. And so that's one of the reasons is it's not protectionism as much as it is to, hey, listen, we've got workers here that we need, and they need jobs. We want to make sure they have a job. And so we want to make sure that countries aren't going in here with, hey, they pay 80 cents an hour to some person who has to work there as a slave, and, there's a problem.
Right. So, no, that's very true.
But let's not go into this. Is kind of more macro, worldwide stuff, and most of our listeners are going, "Oh yeah, I woke up. Oh right here. What did you say?" Okay, so let's go back. Alex, you're a good example, right? You currently have a business, and your business is actually takes products from different countries, takes many products from the United States, but also has to have some products from other countries. Why would you have a product that's not from the United States in your store?
Well, let's look at that as a typical example, right? We're a pretty good example. We're a small business. We're under $10 million a year, so we're considered definitely a small business. But we buy products, and primarily a lot of our products are made in the USA. but a number of them aren't. And like everything else, we're not Amazon, so we don't have a portfolio of thousands of products that come from other places in the world. But inside this country, there's certain things that we can't afford to make, or they're usually labor intensive, and they're specialized and they're done in really high volumes, and so we do bring some of those products in. But we're also affected even on some of our USA made products because some of the raw materials come from other countries, and even though they're manufactured here, these companies still have to take the raw materials and manufacture them from that. So the tariffs sometimes apply there as well.
And so, give us an example of a product that you would like in your store that you would hope would be made in the United States, but you just can't get it made in the United States, and you have to go to other countries.
Sure, I'll give you a couple good examples of that. And often what we find is that electronic components are expensive to make in the U.S. Hey, there we go. Electronics. I like that. Yeah, they're expensive to make in the U.S. because of regulations. Usually, it's difficult. There's chemicals that are involved. Formaldehyde is involved in manufacturing circuit boards, and lead. Now, even though we're lead-free in most of it, there's still some of that. So some of those things are much less expensive to make overseas because of that, and also highly intense labor, where labor charges are high in the U.S. And so I'd love to have more of our electronics components built in the U.S., but it's nearly impossible to be able to do that. In fact, some of them that are assembled here are assembled completely. Like if you think, I'll use an example of a TV, although it's a bad example. The plastic may be manufactured here for the TV, and the glass may be, but the electronic boards that are inside may be built in Korea or Singapore or China, and they become assembled in the U.S. because it's easier to ship the components. They don't get broken, as opposed to shipping the entire piece. And so we have a lot of those examples as well within our business.
So I'm going to go a little bit now back macro on that issue, right? So if something like a TV can be assembled here, but the product cannot be assembled at a cost that can compete with other companies, okay, how in the world are we going to have televisions if the tariffs are so high?
That's always one of the problems.
Right. So if a television that costs, probably average television is probably like $500 to $1,500, I would guess. I mean, yes, you can have a big.
That's high even. That's even high. Yeah.
500.
Yeah, but I mean, you got to look at it like this, right? This is where the whole, without getting political on it, the whole reshoring versus offshoring. The examples are many here that it's not just the labor, but you have to look at the shipping as well. So if they were to, they can build a television outside the U.S., say for $150 that sells for $300 here, but you still have to ship it. And we all know shipping cost and, having to put it across the ocean is expensive. So you figure in there's a $50 cost for that. So their manufacturing is very, very low compared to what the U.S. cost is. So it's very, very difficult to compete in a lot of ways with those type of products. Consumer electronics are probably and appliances are probably the two most difficult ones. Things that require precision machining. For instance, my business, there's a lot of precision machine parts. We have better equipment usually in the U.S. to be able to build that. So our equipment is better. So a vast majority of the components that I buy, I try to buy from the U.S. that are really high quality. But people are also very cautious of paying too much. So they're cost conscious, and they want to get the lowest cost. So often we'll have to outsource. That's the only way to do it. It's pretty sad.
Well, what about robotics? If you have a robot doing it, you don't have to pay them any salary.
Well, that cuts your labor. Well, there's truth to that, right? We do believe that eventually what's going to happen is automation is going to kill those low end jobs. That my former company I worked for did a lot of that. They built stuff in other countries because it was very labor intensive. Then they built automation equipment, and that automation equipment eliminated that, and they brought that back to the U.S. The problem is it doesn't bring a significant number of jobs back to the U.S. other than, say, quality assurance and just making sure the robots keep working. So the jobs are actually changing. So now what's happening, having someone, I'll even use this example of appliances, which is a great example of that. You're seeing some appliances made in the U.S. because what they're actually doing is they're using robotics to build them. But the jobs in the factories have changed from people who are hand assembling things to people who are programming robots or repairing robots. And so those jobs have just changed from the assembly to the repair, maintenance, and programming, although it's probably a 5-to-1 or 10-to-1 job loss. You know, you need 10 people to assemble it, but now you only need one person to program it. So that we're seeing happening quite a bit. And that's been happening for the last 10 years or so. So not like it's a new phenomena.
So would you consider robotics to be similar to AI or not?
Well, I mean, there's AI involved in robotics, and this is partially why you're seeing more and more robotics used in manufacturing, because what AI can do is it can determine. With robotics, a lot of times things have to be centered perfectly, contained perfectly, held perfectly. And now with AI, they can look at it and go, well, it's off a certain amount. I mean, obviously in high-end stuff, you don't have this where it's precision, but it's off a little bit. Let me just shift it so that I can put it in the right spot, and now I'm going to be able to do it. So AI can make that determination. There's a lot of areas where those two will work together. Also, analyzing why my production line is slowing down and films. Previously, a human had to observe that, look at it, and say, here's your problem, and we go fix that. Now AI can come in and go, well, look, if this thing was 3 inches closer, 4 inches farther away, you'd have twice the production, and AI will take that over and make that choice for you. So, yeah, there's a lot of that as well.
So let's go back down to your story. We only have 2 minutes left. So are there any products that you're having difficulty getting recently, or it has not changed with the recent tariffs?
I'll give you a quick example, which will hopefully fit within 2 minutes. I recently had a customer who was very cost conscious. We pushed them to a U.S.-made product. They said, no, I'd love this product that's made in the Far East just because it's a better price. Normally, that company stocks a lot of product, and we should talk about what's happening with inventory. But for some reason, they were out of inventory in this particular product. The product cost $1,730.26. I was hit with a $2,540 tariff to bring it in. So obviously, that made that product, not purchasable. So that just happened to me just yesterday, in fact.
So you're telling me the tariff was more money than the product itself?
Yeah, they're estimating the May 2nd tariff will be 145%. They can't ship it before May 2nd. So you do the math on the $1,700. I know math isn't your strong point, but if you do the math on that,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. Isn't that how
you're checking your fingers there, right? Okay, just checking.
Well,
yeah, so that is one of the things. I think small business is definitely. We operate on lower margins, and there's a lot of panic out there because of this. So it's really tough.
So we're almost ready for a break. So we're going to be taking a quick break and listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. Like no other station in the world. Sure. All right, so Alex, one of the person was asking questions, and they don't know a lot about this, saying, well, it seems to me if you got a tariff and you got to pay more money like the product you were, that would be inflationary. So how does it not become inflationary?
Well, I think it's actually worse than that in a lot of ways. There's a lot of fear and there's a lot of uncertainty around it, and inflation, kind of assumes that you're gonna buy things no matter what the costs are. You're just going to complain about it. I think the worst is that a lot of what people are buying are discretionary, and because of that, people are just stopping spending. I mean, that's what the fear really is. I mean, people believe there's a lot of belief here that this isn't going to last a long time. Well, some people believe it'll last a long time. Some people believe it'll be transient. It'll be really quick. And that's the case. People are holding off on spending, and that's really where most of the fear is coming in. And what we're really seeing out there is this fear of people saying, "Well, I'm just going to hold off. I'm going to stop buying." As a small business, you've heard of this thing called cash flow, right, Peter? Cash flow.
Cash flow. Never heard of that. What is that?
this thing called cash flow. That we have as a small business, right?
Does it have anything to do with accounting, huh?
Yeah, it's like cash cow, cash flow. You don't know anything about that stuff yet.
Well, I want cash cows, yeah.
well, you stop being a cash cow when your cash flow goes away. So that's one of the areas.
If it's negative, you can't be a cash cow, right?
Right. No, it's very, very true. And that's where I think a lot of the people are having a hard time because they're not sure what's going to happen. Everybody's strapped for cash. You don't know if you're gonna make it through it. People stop buying all of a sudden now. What do I do? My sales are down by 20%, 30%, whatever that number is going to be, which could be a pretty big number for a lot of people because people are just a little scared right now. So that's that fear and that what do I do next and what happens to my business and, do I have any recourse? That's what's driving a lot of fear that's out there and also hurting a lot of the businesses. So we always ask people, what are you doing about it? So in my little group of company owners, we're asking people, little small corporations, what are you doing? Are you stocking up? Are you changing lines? Are you trying to buy more U.S. made, which would be a good thing to do, or are you just saying, well, I'm going to ride it out and hope for the best? I don't know what you're hearing out there, but I'm hearing there's a lot of I'm going to stock up, and I think there's a lot of I'm not going to call them unscrupulous because I think it's probably there's some truth to this. People are saying, well, you should stock up. A lot of vendors are just, taking advantage of it, especially if you're a commission salesperson. Hey, don't you think you should buy like 20 times what you really need on that just in case? I mean, let's face it. There's always people in any crisis that will make money, right?
Well, like the toilet paper during COVID. All right, so question for you. I don't think that the average person realizes anything about the consequences of these tariffs. So I don't think that the average person, they may be listening to the news and getting scared of the news about something. The average person, they go to the store and they buy their product. And when they go to the store and they buy the product, if they have to get a new TV and they see it's 145% increase in price, yeah, that's when they're going to do it. But not until the actual tariff has gone through and the price is there is anyone going to really notice it and say, you know what, it's affecting my day-to-day life.
I think you're right about that. I think before we switch to last week that we have to get to, because we have to answer that, there is one thing that's really interesting about this is that we have been at a time of really high inflation over the last few years. Inflation, every week you go in and buy something, it would cost more. I mean, you and I always use that example of like a Big Mac at McDonald's, right? Previous to COVID, those things were like $1.99 on sale for 99 cents. And you'd be hard-pressed to get a Big Mac for $10 in California today. So people are used to this increase in prices. So a lot of my peers out there are saying, well, people are just going to see these tariffs as just another, let's say it's the 10% overall tariff that everything has right now. That's just an increase of 10%. So no one's going to even notice it until you hit, as you said, that 145% tariff if that actually sticks in on May 2nd. So I think there's a lot of truth to us, being little blinders as consumers on this stuff.
So do you think that American-made products are going to increase in price? So, for instance, if you can buy whatever it is, the widget, right, from China, and it went from 99 cents to $1.50, right? Do you think that the American-made widget that sells for $1.15 is going to increase in price?
I hate to say it, but the answer is yes. So I do believe it's an opportunity for American-made companies to compete in a one-to-one basis with some of those offshores with the tariff there. But I'm not seeing that in my own personal experience with my business. I'm seeing those price increases that they've been doing since COVID. People have been ratcheting up. We get a new price list every 4 to 6 weeks from virtually every one of our vendors, and they haven't stopped it. And they're telling us that they're going to continue to increase their prices. I don't know if it's greed or if it's just that maybe it's possible that raw materials are going up. But for the most part, instead of them doing what they would want to do, which is try to be highly competitive against these other companies, they're not doing that. They're actually literally raising the prices, and I'm not sure it's the correct move.
So if we negotiate good tariff deals with other countries and we don't have to go full force, do you think prices will come down?
Absolutely. And I think once American companies realize they can compete on a one-to-one basis and they're able to grow their companies, I think they absolutely will. I mean, I'm seeing that in the manufacturing sector where it involves high-precision machine parts, such as things that are come off of CNC machines and the like. There's a fair amount of competitiveness out there right now, and you can get a much higher quality product for, say, 10% more than a product that's, say, cast aluminum in China, and this is something machined at a billet aluminum in the U.S. We're starting to see those people realize that, hey, I could grow my market by 200%, 300%, 400% this year if I do it right. And so, it becomes this equation. You've probably heard of this before, where it's, if I buy more, I can buy it cheaper. What do we call that, Peter?
I never heard of economies of scale. What is it?
Economies of scale. There we go. Yep, and that's what they think is happening. So I'm hoping that's the case.
Somewhere.
Did you read about that? Was that a book? That was like a fiction book, or was that nonfiction? I'm not sure anymore.
I was probably reading a Harry Potter book,
I believe that.
If I can buy enough magic wands.
Well, those have gone up too. They're made in the UK, so there's a 10% tariff on those. Really good. So can we switch to the questions that we had? We got, I think it was actually 2 weeks ago, we got a really interesting question.
We're going to be taking a break in like 15 seconds. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a word from our sponsor. And as soon as we get word from our sponsor, then we're going to go into that other segment. But we're going to listen to Legal Steps, who's the sponsor for the Ask Brien Show. You listen to the Ask Brien Show on KHTS and 98.1 FM. And now a word from our sponsor.
And thank you to LegalSteps.com. That's LegalStepz. It's spelled with a Z.com. So when you log on to Legal Steps, you're really just going to have an easy go at it. It is not complicated. It's not over the top. It's really just an online course to help you either register a trademark, form an LLC, or form an S corporation. So you've had this idea, great product, great service in your mind for however long, and you're finally going to do it. You're finally going to start your own business. So the experts at Legal Steps are there to help you. When you're logged on, like I said, it's a really easy system to follow. You pick your course, and then you kind of can go at your own pace. I was able to take a course just so I knew like what I was talking about and kind of have an idea of what the product is. And I was able to, the dog's barking at somebody at the door, or my daughter needs help in the kitchen, so I can pause it, rewind it if I didn't catch exactly what was said. I can take notes, and I can see what my expert is looking at, like a screen-in-screen, picture-in-picture, which is really helpful for me. I'm more of a visual learner, so I can see, okay, great, I know I'm answering this question the right way. And it takes out any of the guesswork. It takes out any of the anxiety that maybe, am I doing this the right way? Is this, this is kind of confusing. Are there to guide you. If you get to the point where you're frustrated and confused and just, I can't do this, please someone help me. Well, guess what? The experts at Legal Steps are there to help you, and they'll just do it for you. Those experts have over 30 years experience, and so you know that you're in good hands there. It's legalsteps.com. Oh, and one more thing. The courses are affordable. They're all under $150. So, we're obviously everybody's strapped. Things are crazy out there in terms of our finances, and really $150. Yes, it's a good chunk of change, but don't let that get in the way of what you've always wanted to do, is starting your own business with the help of the experts at Legal Steps, LegalStepz.com.
Well, thank you very much, Jen.
You're welcome.
And thank you very much to Legal Steps for sponsoring our show. And guess what? there is no tariff on legal steps. Wow. All right, Alice, you said you had something else you wanted to discuss. Alex, are you there? Hello?
Oh, did we lose Alex?
Oh, we had a little technical problem.
Oh, there he
Sorry
is.
about that. Obviously, there we go. Yeah, it was a little dead battery there. So one of the things that we do often at the show is we do cover some legal pieces and what happens and what do I do and how do I follow that up. And it's great having Legal Steps as a sponsor as well, because it's a great transition to talk about the next thing, which are some of the questions that we had from people about legal matters. And so, Peter, I think you've got them written down there as to what we were discussing a couple weeks ago, and I think the follow-up is where we want to go. So I'm going to leave it to you to bring us up to speed and follow up on some of those questions we had.
Well, thank you, Alex. So one of the questions people always are asking is, this is my situation. Can I sue? Can I sue? Can I file a lawsuit? Do I have a case? That's probably the number one question people ask. Well, it's kind of funny in the sense of this. Anybody can sue anybody for any reason. Whether or not they're going to prevail, that's the issue, right? So you can explain the situation to me, and there's a number of consequences you have to decide in a lawsuit. First of all, one, what is the amount involved, right? If it's $1,000 or $5,000 or $500,000 or $5 million, that's going to change things. Why? Because if you need to hire an attorney, that can be an expensive proposition for anybody. So, for instance, to file a lawsuit, if it's only a $3,000 case or a $6,000 case, you're probably not going to want to do anything. Now, in the state of California, you can sue somebody for $10,000. You don't need an attorney, and you just go and file an action in the small claims court. You still have to prove your case. It's a much quicker process. What does that mean? Well, in small claims court, you'll have to file there are form documents available from the small claims court in whatever county you're located. You go down to the county, you grab a form, you grab a document, you explain what happened, and you have to serve the other person and file it. So what happens is you file with the small claims court a form complaint where you check off boxes, put in a little bit of information. They have a right to respond to that. You send it to them typically by certified mail. You could personally serve ways to serve people. I'm not going to go through every single possibility here, but you can go through that process. In a small claims court case, you're typically looking, where you get to court, probably in 3 to 6 months you can get to court. And during that time, you'll have a court date, and the first thing the judge is going to say is, okay, down the hallway and see if you guys can resolve it. They want to see if you can resolve it before they have to date the case. If the parties can't agree and, I want $10,000, I'm not paying you a penny, then it has to be resolved. Now, when you go to a small claims court, that judge is typically not I shouldn't use the word, they are judges, but they usually don't have the same background and depth that judges do in other courts, in the Superior Court, in the municipal courts, and other courts within the county, wherever you're located. Those judges have a little bit more high criteria. So what happens is sometimes you may have a judge who's, I'm a personal lawyer, or I'm an estate planning lawyer, or I'm a divorce lawyer, and so you're handling a whole bunch of cases. Now, every lawyer, in order to become a lawyer, they have to have a general background in many different subjects. In law school, they'll learn many different subjects, and the bar examination will determine. But when you are out in the field, and like say you're an estate planning attorney years, and then you take on the role of being a judge, well, you have 20 years of experience handling estate planning matters. So when somebody comes in with a car accident, it's not the same. What am I saying? What I'm saying here is that the depth and breadth of the court system and the judges, as you go up the stream all the way to the Supreme Court, they're higher level people in the sense that they have a broader background and have a better understanding. Everybody has a general understanding as a judge, but they may not have the same capacity. What does that mean? It means there's a risk that you may have a great case and lose, or you may have a terrible case and win. Now, in small claims court, you pretty much have one shot. You can go to court. You don't need to have an attorney. When you get to court, if the judge makes a ruling against you, you can appeal it. But you can appeal it only to the regular court when you do that, you can have an attorney represent you in that court, okay? But it's the last shot. You can't go any further. So if you win or lose at that hearing, it's over. There's no appeal. I'm not taking this to the Supreme Court. It's over. It's done. So it's a one-and-done situation. That's the concerns and issues of small claims court, and it's probably the best thing for a small business owner so they don't have to go out and hire an attorney. Hiring an attorney can be very, very expensive. But we do have to take a quick break to listen to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. We'll be right back. Welcome back to listen to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. All right. So before the break, we were talking about small claims, but Alice had some questions. So what was that about?
Well, Peter, these are things that we got reflected back and forth about, and we covered them a little bit before, but it's always good to talk about them. One of the things is always, as you always say, small claims is a good place for business to start because it saves the cost of an attorney and maybe cheaper. But what areas would a small business use small claims court for? I mean, why would I do that?
Well, it could be any type of dispute or any problem. You want to get it resolved. So let's say you have somebody in, I don't know, Ventura County, and they ordered a product from you for $8,000. It was a specially made product. So you have to go out and pay you're with your profit margin, you're paying $5,000 for the product, right? So you ordered it specifically. It can't be used for anyone. They're not going to take it back because it's specific for that product. I don't know. You know your business, so you can know a specific customized product that you need that can't be replaced. Now the person says, you know what, I don't want it, and he didn't pay you by credit card or whatever, or however he paid you, but now you're not getting paid. Well, what are you going to do? You can write him a letter and say, listen, you got to pay for this. What am I going to do with it? The fact that it has the initials PENQUIN, what am I going to do with it?
Right.
I'm a penguin. I'm a goat. So what am I going to do with it? I can't use it for my car. What am I going to do? And the other guy's going to say, well, too bad. The tariffs are killing me, and I can't afford it anymore. So I'm sorry, but you're going to have to ship it back. And the supplier's saying, I ain't taking it back. And if you do, besides the restocking fee, it's going to cost you $1,000 to ship it back because it's going to one of those countries. So you've got problems, right? So that could be a case where somebody would want to go to small claims court. Really what it comes down to, and almost every lawsuit is the same way, it's somebody feels that there's not equity. In other words, it's not fair that something is happening. And the two parties, not that they're stubborn. They can be stubborn. There are a lot of cases like that, but one person has a different understanding or belief with their own system, what they think should happen under the circumstances. And so that's why people say, I'm going to go to court. But it's based on that they think that something is unfair. They don't agree with the other person. So that's the basis for why they want to take it to court and let the judge decide. And they think that the judge is going to agree with it. That's why they're doing it, right? And the other side is saying, well, there's no way the judge is going to say that that's wrong. Come on. I'm allowed to do that. I don't understand. I live in the United States of America. You can't just take me into court and take it from me. So, I'm going to defend myself. But, on top of everything else, Alex, there's another factor that people understand in lawsuits, and specifically even in small claims court, but not to the same extent. That's time, right? If you get involved in a real big lawsuit, which I don't want to discuss, you could be spending months and years in the case, and they could be sending you documentations and information that you need to provide. It can take forever, okay? And I think some of us have experienced that. But in small claims court, it's still a time factor, right? You're going to have to write a demand letter to the other side asking for whatever it is. I want the product. You're going to have to pay me for it, whatever. And then you have to find out where they are. Sometimes people hide. I don't live there anymore. Good luck. You got to get them, whatever. And then after you get that approach, then, okay, well, now I need to go and file a small claims action because they haven't responded. So I have to go down to the courthouse or grab them online, figure out how to fill them out. I'm not an attorney. I could use a paralegal, okay? I certainly not going to use an attorney. It's too expensive. So I have to figure out what I need to do to make sure that procedurally I'm going to follow the law, because many times cases don't get to court because procedurally there's a procedure that you have to follow. You don't follow the procedure, well, too bad, you're out. Okay, and then legally, are you correct or you're not correct? And then after all that, then you have to come up with, okay, well, if I'm going to go to court, I have to have an organized manner to explain it to the judge, okay, and explain it to them so that they understand what's going on, what the problem is, and why you think you're right. And then if you have documentation or documents that will support your position, you have to have those. You have to have them organized. You need 2 or 3 copies. Why? You need to give 1 copy to the judge, 1 copy to the other side, and 1 copy for yourself. All this stuff takes time, and the court hearing is going to be like 8:30 in the morning, and you may be living in Van Nuys, and the court may be in Torrance. All right. So good luck on going down the 405 if you're from LA to courthouse at 8:30 in the morning. It's many, many hours. It's going to take a lot of time. At the end of the day, it's like, is it worth it? And what am I going to accomplish? And then you go to court, and everything works out perfectly. Wow, that was awesome. Well, guess what? If a person files bankruptcy, in many, many cases, the money or the judgment that you have against the person, it's gone. In many, many cases. Not all, but many cases, it can be gone if they file bankruptcy. 2, you may not be able to find them, okay? They may move around. 3, there may not be a way to collect. Do you know how to collect a judgment, collect something? No, it's not a simple thing. Not everyone is, above board and say, okay, hey, I lost that lawsuit to Alex. The judge ordered me to pay $951. I'm going to write him a check and send it to him. It doesn't work that way. In a dream world it does, but it doesn't work that way. And so many people have judgments and they can't even collect them. So there's a lot of time, effort, no guarantee of payment. That's a lot of stuff to be dealing with. And we're just talking about a small claims case. We're not even getting into many, many issues here. But just the simplest things is going to take you time. And what if you're not living in L.A. anymore? What if you moved to Vegas? Or, worse, Maryland? How are you going to get back to court to handle the hearing? That's a lot of time, a lot of effort. But that's all we have for today. You've been listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. Alex, thank you very much. Jen, over and out.